Individual killing another is almost as old as mankind itself, but in the late 20th century, a new phenomenon appeared. Attacks, without warning, by men intent on killing as many people as they could. One of the most frightening episodes occurred on a New York commuter train bound for Long Island in December of 1993.
What began as a routine ride home ended in a bloody massacre. 5 shot dead, 18 injured by gunfire. The rampage came without warning. A gunman with a 9mm handgun simply stood up and opened fire.
His name was Colin Ferguson.
Without a word, he walked down the aisle, shooting as many passengers as he could, pausing only to reload.
I stood up to start getting off the train, and all of a sudden, some shooting was going on. We thought it was sort of like firecracker noise.
Everybody was running through the car saying, someone's got a gun, someone's got a gun.
Gunmen started coming down the car, shooting at people, and I just crouched down under the seat and just prayed.
It was just bodies all over. Guys were shot in the head. It was disgusting.
Ferguson had been sitting in the third car of the 5:33 train to Hicksville. He had 160 rounds of ammunition in a canvas bag and a handgun he had purchased legally.
The shots just kept going off. He wouldn't stop shooting. He just wouldn't stop shooting.
I was trying to go leave the train exit, and there was people there, and I'm jumping on top of people, pushing them down and trying to protect myself, and I thought somebody just hit me and knocked me over, but it wasn't. I got a bullet in the arm, which is sitting in my chest right now. And next thing I know, the train stopped and the doors wouldn't open. We were banging. Everybody was just banging on the doors trying to open.
As the train arrived at the Maryland Avenue station, Ferguson paused to reload. It was then that 3 male passengers grabbed him and threw him on the floor. The whole episode had lasted just 3 minutes.
The stories of a handful of heroes are beginning to emerge as well. An off-duty officer arrived on the scene to find the suspect held down by 3 commuters.
The police officer, Andrew Roderick, had gone to the station to pick up his wife, who happened to be on the 5:33.
When I was looking inside the train trying to see where my wife might be so I go around and pick her up, I noticed there was massive confusion on board the train. I then heard people screaming, there's a man with a gun, and he's shooting people.
Roderick ran back to his car, got his gun and handcuffs, called the Nassau County Police Department, and then jumped on the train.
The subject was on the bottom of 3 large commuters, and they were holding him down, and the whole time the subject was not able to move at all.
Was he saying anything, screaming or doing anything?
Perfectly calm, didn't say a word. Just pretty much just waiting there to see what happened.
Arrested, Ferguson was booked for murder and held without bail. His 3-minute shooting spree ultimately left 6 people dead, 19 wounded. For the families of the passengers, it became a living nightmare.
For hours, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters stood by praying that their loved ones had been spared.
You know, we're just waiting for her sister right now. You know, she's a little upset right now to talk. She doesn't know. I mean, she could have been on any one of the carts in the train, but.
As some people drove frantically from hospital to hospital searching for their relatives, police began their investigation to find out why Ferguson had gone on such a bloody rampage.
Anything to say, Colin?
Police say Ferguson, who has no prior record, was carrying notes that reveal the shooting was racially motivated, an act of retaliation against those he said discriminated against him.
In his paperwork, it indicates that he particularly chose Nassau County over New York City because he has some particular feelings about Mayor Dinkins and chose not to commit this act in New York City. He did it out here.
He wrote down these notes because, in a sense, he wanted us to know why he did it.
James Fox is an expert on the psychology of mass killers.
He had a statement to make, and he made it in the most powerful way. This was not a man who suddenly went berserk and shot everything and everyone that moved. This was a man who had a mission, and he carried out in a very violent way.
He mentions particularly a variety of people and institutions that he felt were racist. He targets Caucasians, he targets blacks, he targets Orientals. It seems he had hostilities regarding a major portion of the population and a variety of institutions.
One of those institutions Ferguson raged against was Adelphi University, located just a few blocks from the Maryland Avenue station. He'd been a student there until he was expelled for strange, erratic behavior.
I thought he was disturbed enough to be expelled because I thought he was a threat to other students, verbally, not physical. I thought verbally he was disruptive.
For example, Ferguson disrupted a symposium given by a faculty member about her sabbatical leave in South Africa.
He stands up and he says, well, that's not what we should be talking about. What we should be talking about is how to eliminate white people in South Africa. He was making students very nervous, both black and white. The students, they were really very nervous. They didn't like to talk to him and so forth because he would invent altercations.
Ferguson's private life was full of turmoil as well.
The suspect in the Long Island Railroad massacre was at one time leading a charmed life. 35-year-old Colin Ferguson came from an upper-class Jamaican family and was well educated.
Earlier this morning? Yeah.
But his parents died, the family fortune dwindled, and Ferguson decided to emigrate to the United States.
After emigrating, he married an American who later divorced him. That triggered a downward spiral documented in handwritten notes that left Ferguson embittered with society.
He felt entitled to more, expected more of the world, and he blamed other people for his being a failure.
Dr. Park Dietz is a psychiatrist who specializes in mass killers.
Ferguson had the view that people who were Caucasian and people who were Asian were keeping him down and preventing him from being the grand success he should be. He commented to his landlord that he should be living in a mansion, not in this apartment.
According to the landlord of his Brooklyn home, Ferguson's obsession with race became frightening. Other neighbors say that he kept to himself.
Very quiet. Strange.
Strange?
Yeah, quiet. No, he never talked, never smiled or anything.
Well, Mr. Ferguson is as classic and typical as you can get. It's a middle-aged man who's not making it, who's a loser, who's had difficulty in jobs, in school, in relationships, who's also a loner, who lives alone, has no one to turn to get through the hard times, and who's full of anger and hate, and who wants revenge. And that's exactly what he did. He took matters and guns into his own hands.
Colin Ferguson was only the latest in a spate of frightening psychopaths, men who kill at random. Those stories and more when that afternoon, a disgruntled student named Charles Whitman climbed the university's bell tower and opened fire on unsuspecting pedestrians as they strolled across campus.
Whitman was a criminal innovator. He was the first to do what he had done, which was to take multiple weapons to a point at which he could safely engage multiple targets and kill strangers randomly.
A sniper identified as 24-year-old Charles J. Whitman started shooting from the observation deck of the 27-story tall University Tower.
But even before he climbed the tower, Whitman had already killed two people. First, his mother, then his wife. And now, from his well-fortified position on the Texas campus, the former Eagle Scout opened fire on total strangers.
Ambulances screaming all over the city, and more sounds, more shots being fired at the tower and on the tower. On the mall, maybe an empty carton of shells.
Victims were cut down on the west and south sides of the campus as the sniper zeroed in on his targets with unerring accuracy. Those who were felled with bullets from the high-caliber rifle were pulled to safety as soon as possible by officials and passers-by. Others crouched in terror. Heavily armed Austin police, sheriff's deputies, highway patrolmen, and Texas Rangers converged on the campus and began returning the sniper's fire. But he was well entrenched, and he had a fantastic vantage point of the entire area.
One of Whitman's victims was a 24-year-old college senior who was shot as she stood 2 blocks away from the bell tower.
The shot that hit me bypassed me and ricocheted off a building, and it was very, very loud.
Then what happened?
Then everybody ran. And they shot 2 more people while we were running. We ran in the shop, which we were standing in front of and trying to get out, and everybody was in a state of panic. And very, you know, it was just chaos.
Another victim was standing in the South Mall when she was shot.
We had started to run just a little bit as we passed the steps to the undergraduate library. And as we were about to the corner, he shot. And I lay there for about, probably 15 or 20 minutes.
The campus at one time looked like a battlefield. Dead people were lying on the sidewalks under 100-degree temperature, with police and others occasionally darting from cover to cover.
Many of the wounded had to wait until the end of the gun battle, until 15 persons had died, until officers Romero Martinez and Houston McCoy and a volunteer, Alan Crum, could work their way up to the catwalk. It was Martinez who fired the shots which ended it.
I shot the first time, and he jerked up and swung the carbine towards me, but when he was swinging it, he didn't have it leveled at me. He was trying to bring it down, and I just kept firing, and he just kept trembling, going up instead of coming down with me.
After Whitman was shot dead, Austin police discovered an impressive arsenal.
4 rifles, 3 pistols, enough ammunition for an extended siege, and supplies to sustain himself for several days. He bought 1 new rifle the morning of the murders. What kind of a man was Whitman? Was he mentally sick? And if so, what was bothering him? Some indication was given in the last letters he wrote, as Austin Police Chief R.A. Miles explained at a news conference today.
According to the statement that he made in one of his notes was that, in his opinion, that the world was just not worth living in.
But Whitman's father disagreed.
I only think the factor in this is his mental strain from his actual studying. He was trying to prove a point to himself, to his family, me, and his mother.
Why was he trying to prove this point?
Why does any kid? Here's a kid that before he was 12 years old held the largest rank in Eagle Scouts, the first one to ever acquire this year, and no one has ever did it since. This boy, he was a concert pianist. This boy was always for knowledge. He wanted to get ahead. He was pushing himself all his life.
People who had known Whitman found it difficult to associate the nice young man they knew with a brutal murderer who had killed 16 people and wounded 31 others.
He was always kidding and joking and just full of life, and just was an all-around wonderful person. And nobody ever would have thought that anything...
Our massacre remained just that, beyond imagination, until July 18th, 1984. That afternoon, an unemployed security guard named James Oliver Huberty walked into a McDonald's in San Ysidro, California, and opened fire.
700 Bravo. 700 Bravo. 10-4 east at McDonald's. Shots being fired now. The suspect is a white male, 40 years old, with a light blue shirt and dark pants. Unknown what his location is at.
Keep moving forward.
Reportedly, it was the weapon involved with a rifle per one witness. I've got 2 possible victims on the north side of McDonald's. 710.
He just shot anyone that moved, anyone that got in his way.
There were bullets ricocheting all over the place. I didn't get a chance to see him, but it was scary. Real scary.
A police SWAT team took up positions outside, waiting for a clear view of the gunman.
The SWAT team came downstairs, but we didn't know if it was them or it was probably the guy. We didn't want to open the door, but at the end we just opened it, and it was the SWAT team, and we took us out.
77 minutes after he opened fire with a 12-gauge shotgun and expended 200 rounds of ammunition, Huberty was dead, killed by a police sharpshooter.
The moment he walked in, his first words were, "Everybody get down on the floor or I'll kill somebody." And at that time, they all complied and did what they were told.
He killed them anyway.
And he killed them anyway.
We have 20 people who were killed from 6 months to in their 60s.
One of those killed was an 11-year-old boy named Omar Hernandez, who was shot in the back.